And as we go through these cases in this multi-segment operation that we're doing here, I want to provide the basis of information, the names, the dates, the addresses, where I got this information, the resources, so people can verify this on their own. So people that we want to talk about here is Charlotte Mann, who is definitely a part of this crash retrieval operation, and Reverend William Huffman. He's very instrumental in this whole case. So let's go to the next slide here. And I also want to talk about MO41. This is a book by Paul Blake Smith, and that stands for Missouri 1941, the bombshell before Roswell. So we're talking about 6 years prior to Roswell. Many think that this whole series of UFO crash retrievals begins at Roswell. That's incorrect. We're at least 6 years prior to with the Missouri 1941 case. So we go to our next slide here, and what you're seeing here is basically the very beginning of this retrieval operation. So it's around 9:30 p.m. at night, and Reverend Hoffman gets a knock on his door. Police show up, and they said, "Reverend, we believe we have what we think is a crash of an unknown aircraft, and we need your assistance. Can you come with us?" So he agreed. He gets in the squad car. They drive about 15 miles across town. This is April 20th, 1941. And when they get there, this is what they see. They see about a 25-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that augured in at about a 40-degree angle. There was a hull breach on the side of the craft showing you the interior components. So there were buttons and switches. There was a swivel chair. Outside the craft, there was debris, and there were 3 ET bodies. 2 already passed away. 1 was still alive. They were all wearing a one-piece, tight-fitting blue flight suit, about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. And the military didn't quite get there yet. The fire department was there. There were farm hands around the area. And I also want to mention that there were newspaper photographers going around this entire scene and taking photographs of this entire operation.
So we know the facts based on what the police saw, because they're assuming already that this is not something they're familiar with.
They weren't sure at the beginning stages. They thought this might be something military, some type of new aircraft. They weren't sure. But as we get into this, now we know that this wasn't from around here.
But it was important enough for them to actually go find the local preacher.
Correct.
To come out to give last rites to what they don't know yet, if these are human or non-human.
That's correct.
Very interesting.
That's correct. So what you see here is some burning embers in the background, fire department, and we're going to move on to the next slide here just to continue with our account. Here's Reverend William Hoffman basically praying over the last of the survivor. He was surviving for about 60 seconds, and then he expired, but he got there just in time.
What could be going through his mind standing over this, something he's never seen before in his life? Because he's probably in his 60s.
He had not encountered anything like this before.
Exactly.
This was definitely new, but he did get there just prior to this ET expiring. So I want to make that. So we'll continue on here. While all this is going on, these newspaper photographers are taking photographs of this operation. By now, the military's kind of getting on the scene, and there was a few farm hands that picked up one of these dead ET corpses, and this is all via Charlotte Mann. She saw this. She saw the photograph of this, and they outstretched its arms. They kind of supported it under its armpits, and this newspaper photographer took a shot of this. This photograph kind of was handed down through the family. Later on, a quote-unquote photographic analysis expert asked if he could borrow this photograph, and I think, Tony, you can kind of see where this is going, and this photograph disappeared.
Sure.
So this is always the case within these crash retrieval operations. We get this close to getting some really good evidence, and then somehow, boom, it goes away. Now, this is drawn by Charlotte from memory, from when she held this photograph. And what I want to do is I thought, well, since we don't have the photograph, it's decades old, the original is gone. It kind of had scalloped edges like these old photographs. It was black and white in color. It probably had coffee stains, might have been burned, ripped up. I thought, well, we don't have the original. Can we do a replica? Can we take all the information we got from Charlotte everything we got from the Reverend. Can we put together something that represents what this actually looks like? And so we're going to move on to the next slide, and this is what we came up with. This is the best I could come up with what this photograph may have looked like back in 1941, something that looked similar to this.
Look at that. That is something. I wonder what these gentlemen were thinking holding that ET.
That's right.
Like what was going through their minds. Hey, Billy, grab the other arm. Pick him up here. Let's get a picture. And so this photograph disappears, but we know for a fact there was one.
There was a photo. Charlotte, who gave a lecture at International UFO Congress about 5 years ago, she talked about holding it in her hands. She saw it. She held the photograph. She drew it from memory. That information was brought over to Leonard Stringfield, and he wrote about it in his status report.
Do we know who the photographer was?
No, it was a local photographer. I think we actually do. These people are all long since gone now. The Reverend's gone, photographer's gone, the military, those people are gone.
And that's why you're preserving this history.
Yes.
Because all those people are gone. And you're putting all the facts into detail now with these drawings, which is absolutely amazing. Wow, just something else.
And as we go through these cases, Tony, you'll see that the body count goes up, the craft count goes up, and you know that the United States military-industrial complex is not going to put all their eggs in one basket. Now, clearly, all roads lead to Rome, but in the case of this presentation, all roads lead to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Early on, they ship different craft there, bodies there, but I think at this point, some of those assets have been moved around. They have diversified their portfolio. So we know that things were sent to Eglin Air Force Base, MacDill Air Force Base, Edwards North Base Complex, Homestead Air Force Base, all around the country. That's what they've done.
So this is taking place in 1941. There's a couple
Correct.
things that happen on a historical level. We know there's the sinking of the Bismarck. Bob Hope is a big entertainment, and he opens up the USO to cheer up the military. Does this make national news? Does this get out there?
No, it doesn't, because when you talk about the crown jewels of the United States government, the biggest secrets, that stuff is off the radar screen. Now, this is prior to the atomic bomb, but later on, and this is talked about in Timothy Good's book, is the subject of UFOs, specifically the crash retrievals, was classified higher than the atomic bomb program, above top secret.
But locally, this was big news because the whole town basically knew about this. Is that correct?
I don't think the whole town knew about it. It was contained. It was a microcosm. No, I don't think it was. Well, the farm people knew, but they were sworn to secrecy by the military.
And you speak about Wright Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They were, I think they were established in 1917.
Well,
so are they the only ones at that time? Are they the biggest, the baddest for the United States? Or are there other military installations? Why them?
Prior to October 1947, it was known as Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, because the Air Force was not a separate entity at that time. It was only after October 1947. Now, the reason why these crash retrievals have been sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is because, number one, they have the aeromedical lab there. They can check the bodies, the tissue, the samples, the interior organs. And number two is they have the Foreign Technology Division where they can test the tensile strength of the materials associated with these vehicles.
So you're going from Missouri
Yep.
all the way up to Ohio with a down craft on the back of a truck.
Eventually, the craft made their way to that location.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And we'll continue on to our next slide here. I want to ask the question, where could you hide three extraterrestrial bodies and a circular craft and debris of unknown origin in 1941? Where would we put it in 1941, Tony? Where would we hide this back in 1941?
My educated guess was you got to put it underground somewhere.
Okay, that's good.
You can't. That's my guess.
Do you have any idea where, though, underground? Where would we put this?
No.
Okay, so we would put it at the Pentagon, right? Hide this at the Pentagon. But the Pentagon didn't exist in 1941. So where did they put this? We have some evidence to indicate that it was put in an underground basement vault at the U.S. Capitol.
You gotta be kidding me.
Nope. Paul Blake Smith has made a very good case that the three bodies, the craft, debris was sent to an underground vault at the Pentagon, at the U.S. Capitol.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, it's probably the most protected location in the world at the time.
At the time, yes.
And I don't know much about the structure of the White House or all this stuff here, but yeah, I guess that would make total sense.
They absolutely do have an underground vault at the Capitol building. They absolutely do. So what I want to do now is take our audience to the next slide and show you what it might look like if we could sneak inside and get a look inside this Capitol vault, something that looks like this. So now you can see these ET bodies kept in these preservation glass jars. You've got the craft, we've got different vaults, we've got different crates keeping the debris. Something like this is most likely, or at one time was at the Capitol building.
Wow, that's interesting. Very X-Files looking.
Yes.
Very X-Files looking. Do you think we still have things there that...
It's difficult to say.
Okay.
It's difficult to say.
But at that time?
At that time.
In 41.
Yes,
okay.
correct.